So some interesting but not necessarily surprising comments earlier this week from Kubrick. Excuse me, Cole. People butcher my last name all the time, and I just did with yours. But um, he said, and this was very, I think this is his take talking about Florida and everything, a lot of the transition in Florida. He said, Georgia looks like it's on track to be the next dominant force in college football for the foreseeable future. And Cole's been around for a while. Played at Auburn about two decades ago, and has can see what everybody else should be able to see, which is that what Kirby Smart's done at Georgia is really slowly build a machine. I guess is what I would call it. There are not a lot of missing parts in the Georgia Bulldogs these days, and I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon. Um, you want to be real careful with certainty, though, and hubris. These are dangerous things that you find out about along the way if you're not careful. But in talking with a couple of people earlier this week, just casually, talking about the dogs and sort of the way that Kirby has built this thing, you're seeing a program, and when I turn this way, it's always to see the board, so I have reference to the guys on the team. But you're seeing a situation right now where there's just not a lot of holes. Even next season, when you've got guys like Jordan and Devontae and they're gone, you know, Quay Walker, Channing Tindall, these guys have developed seemingly behind the scenes. Not all of those guys I just mentioned, but like Channing Tindall has seemingly you know developed behind the scenes. Well, he's been developing the whole time. He's just not played as much. And what has happened at Georgia is guys just surge at the end of their careers. And I remember this being the case at Alabama at times for defensive guys under Kirby, where you wouldn't know who they were, and then a year later they were gone, and there was just another guy that replaced them. You're seeing right now at Georgia the linebackers that will have a challenge on their hand, okay, next season, replacing guys like Adam Anderson's not playing right now for obvious reasons. Quay Walker, Channing Tindall, Robert Beal, probably N'Kobe. Now you're seeing guys like Xavier Sori out there, Dumas Johnson, Chaz Chambliss is out there flashing, which if you watched him in high school is not really a shocking thing. He has a great ability to rush the passer. On the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line is not old. It's young. I mean, you're looking at probably next year with Mims, Ratledge, Van Pran. These are even McClendon to some degree. These are younger players, and guys like Jamari are going to leave. You would imagine. No one has to leave this year, is my understanding, because of the COVID stuff. But Georgia looks like it is on track to be the next dominant force in college football for the foreseeable future. The next, when I think the national folks are finally starting to understand what some of us have seen behind the scenes, which is that either Georgia's replaced Clemson or they've pushed them out of the way completely. Or, I mean, I think to me, there are three dominant programs in college football right this second, and it appears that they will continue to be this way. That's Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama, and that's in no particular order. I think we could see a decade where those three, a decade. I think we could see a half a decade where those three teams fight it out for the national championship in some roundabout way for foreseeable future. I mean, you can make that case since 2017 that that's sort of been what's going on. 17 with Georgia and Alabama, obviously 18 Alabama playing in it. 19 was LSU and Clemson, and then 20 last year Ohio State and Alabama. And this year it looks like at least two of the three teams I mentioned are going to be in the playoff again. So um, I just when you talk with folks that have covered the team that are not, in the Kool-Aid, they're impressed and they do not think this is going to just stop. I mean, you're talking about an offense that those of us in the media have focused on, rightfully so, because there's been a lot of moving parts on this offense, including, the marquee player, JT Daniels, not playing this season. The marquee player coming into the season not playing as much as you would have suspected because of injury and then because of Stetson Bennett's play. So Even that has not prevented Georgia from having a top 10 offense. I mean, these guys are scoring 40 points a game without George Pickens and JT Daniels. Now, that's pretty shocking. I mean, let's be honest. If I told you at the start of the season that Georgia would average 40 points or more without JT Daniels as a starting quarterback and without George Pickens playing. If I told you that in March, just after George got hurt, you would not believe me. I would not have believed me. But it's happened, and it's happened because of the sum of the parts. There is no one player on Georgia's offense that is unstoppable. There are really good players. Brock Bowers, Zamir White. They have been the steadiest players so far this season. But then you get James Cook, you get, Lab McConkey. You have Darnell Washington, and you have guys whose names I'm not. I mean, there are so many players at Georgia that are not superstars, but they just kill you with these over and over again, knife cuts. And people wonder, well, why do games break towards the dogs in the second quarter? And to me, to some degree, what happens is at first it's hard to score points because you don't have the ball. I mean, in the first quarter you might get it twice, and it's hard to build up a 30-0 lead when you have the ball twice. In the second quarter, by then you have multiple possessions by both teams. Georgia's defense has almost certainly not allowed a touchdown, and perhaps has allowed a score, maybe. And then Georgia's adjusted on defense, and then it becomes very difficult to do anything. So then you start talking about field position. It's just been tough. But y'all, this is not a mistake. This has not been by accident. This has been Kirby Smart from the start. It's Kirby gets the blame, and he should get the credit. It's not all his fault, and it's not exclusively his, glory. But when you look back in 2016 at the learning that Kirby had and went through, that was a time where he was finding his way. I think to some degree in 17 that was still the case, and you can make that case in 18. I don't know if you can really say that as much anymore. I mean, we're 5 years into this thing or six, whatever it is, and he's learned. He's running his business the way that he has to, uh, and he's planning for his future by investing in it. You think about the change at Georgia. Okay, the recruiting budget has skyrocketed. The social media has been really important. I don't know if people understand that is. I mean, I can speak to this as a person in the industry. That is an extremely important aspect in society today in marketing. You cannot have a marketing effort without a powerful social media presence. And Georgia's presence on social media is steady. It's on brand all the time, and they don't fool around with the chitter chatter like Dan Mullen and Eli Drinkowitz at Missouri. They're straight. They're not trying to make fun of people. I mean, they're just saying, "Hey, listen, this is how we're going to celebrate Georgia." People respond to that. Um, they've got that. The $63 million construction at the numbers don't, I might be slightly off on these, a million here, a million there, but the construction at Sanford for the recruiting lounge. You've got the indoor practice facility, which was on its way, but now we have a new building there that is going to be Georgia's. I can't remember how many million, 100 million or 80 million, whatever it is. Football offices, recruiting tool. So Georgia's Georgia, I don't know if they're ahead of the curve, but they're right there on it. And this is all because of Kirby's vision. The thing that he has had over time that he's correct about and has almost always been right about, and I've been right there with him, just pom-pomming it up the whole time. He has vision, and everybody doesn't have vision, and football coaches often don't. They want to spend money, they want to have a marketing plan, but they don't have vision. And his vision was to not just bring Georgia where it needed to be, but take it beyond that, and understanding that this has become an arms race between essentially 3 to 6 teams in college football: Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Florida, who's way behind the curve, LSU, Clemson, Texas A&M, and maybe Michigan. Okay, Texas, no, you're not being mentioned right now because you guys can't figure anything out. So this is a race between those schools, and Georgia has the capital to make things happen. So when Cole Kubrick's saying Georgia looks like it's on track to be the next dominant force in college football for the foreseeable future, this is going to be a 10-year. I should not use the term war. There's real wars, and there are, wars like this that I'm talking about, which are not a real thing. But this is going to be a 10-year fight between Georgia and Alabama in the SEC. I don't know if we're halfway through it and it started in 2017 or if it's just kicked off. But I think this is going to be a 10-year fight, at least, between Georgia and Alabama. And it could be in the future that it's Georgia and Texas A&M or Florida and Texas A&M or Georgia and LSU. We can't know these things. But why Cole Kubrick's saying this is because he can see what reality is, which is that they have a dynamic recruiter, a person who sacrifices time with their family in order to get the job done, and a fan base that is willing to not just pony up the money, but demand results. That's the difference between Georgia, Alabama, and honestly, a lot of the rest of the SEC. I think LSU is going to be in that ballpark. We're going to see with Texas A&M. We're going to see with Florida. But Texas A&M spending money, but are they demanding championships? Because they're not getting them. Florida, they're only now building a $95 million facility. I mean, so that's where we're at. I think he's right. Penn State, foolish with money this week. I mean, if you want to say, oh, coaches can just get bought out, they're not getting bought out for $80 million. You're spending $80 million, and if you want to fire James Franklin in a year and a half or two, you will have spent $80 million over 10 years, whether you like it or not, unless he is gone against the contract, which he's not going to. So Georgia knows what it's doing, and Cole Kubrick's correct. I just thought that's something that needed to be pointed out. We'll see you over on dogpost.com.